When I started the Vegetable Academy many years ago, we were using 7 urban properties in the city to grow our own food for our family and to provide food for our community. At that time, I was serving over 50 families with weekly boxes of vegetables. Now, that was a great way to access a lot of land for a low cost. I didn't have any big startup investments needed to get my farm going. But there were some complications with having vegetables scattered throughout the city, obviously. So I always kind of longed for having our own space that I could use to grow vegetables and have more land security, not risk losing vegetables in the night, and just have simpler operation overall. And last year, that search for land finally came to an end when we found this beautiful 3-acre property close to Saskatoon, still within city limits basically. So we're going to take some time to walk through the land and show you what we've got started here. But I wanted to start outside of the property here because one of my favorite features is the fence. One of the prized pieces of infrastructure that I can have as a market gardener is deer protection. So the fact that this property came with an 8-foot deer fence around the entire enclosure, it was just an incredible gift to help us start up here. So anytime we close this front entry gate, we are completely preventing any of the deer in the neighborhood from entering and nibbling on our apples, our vegetables, and anything else that we've got growing in here. The next thing we really liked about this space was that the house to my right here and the garage are all right at the front of the property. There's no long drive entering the property, not a lot of road to maintain. And because these buildings are located right at the front here, that gives us all the space in the back of the 3 acres for vegetable growing projects, orchard stuff, and other things. Now, it could be tempting for someone with a bunch of land to start plopping plants in any odd place as they get inspired, but it can quickly spiral downward and become a chaotic mess if we don't have some general strategy involved with the planning of these growing areas. So I divided our growing focuses into 4 zones, and the first zone starts right here with our kitchen garden. Now, the purpose of the kitchen garden is to just grow itty-bitty amounts of vegetables for our family, just in small quantities here. So we've just got small 15 square foot raised beds. You've seen these at our past home plots. We took the same raised beds, dug them up and put them here with a bit more spacing in between because we've got the space now to afford a bit more generous spacing for walkways. But otherwise, we see the same trellises, we see the same netting over top of the brassicas here. Crop selection here includes things like herbs, salad greens, small batches of cucumbers, cherry tomatoes, broccoli, cauliflower in small quantities for our family. And we want this zone closest to the house because this is the place we're going to visit most frequently, right? Now let's move on further back and see what comes next. This second growing zone is designated as our market garden in the future, and right now we're using it mostly as a pantry garden for our family. So that means we've got larger standard beds here, now up to 50 square feet per bed, and we're using the space to grow crops in larger volumes. So we're thinking about storage crops here, things that we can blanch and put in the freezer, or things that we can store in our cold storage room for the winter, and usually harvest in large batches as well. So let's take a look at the crops that we got selected here. This site seemed like the ideal location for the market garden zone because we've got this boundary of lilac bushes on either side. So that's great wind protection for our market garden as well. There were just a few apple trees and choke cherries and things to get rid of here before we had a clear space to work with. So we already passed a plot of garlic, hardneck garlic. Then we've got a big bed of corn here, shelling peas, onions, a couple beds of parsnips, carrots. We've got 7 beds of carrots here. For our family, we'd need about 2.5 beds for the year. These extra beds are for marketing to my farm members in the fall. A couple of test beds of determinate tomatoes, all storage tomatoes. We're just going to come out here with crates when they're ready, load them up and take them inside to sauce for the winter. Then under cover here we've got cabbage and beets, also good storage crops. And in the extra space we had at the back here, I'm just multiplying our strawberries so that we can start a larger patch next year. So there's a quick look at our second growing zone. I'm excited to develop this into a market garden space. I've had to be disciplined this year by just starting with half of it. We can see in the background there we've got a whole another half that's just tarped right now, quietly killing the grass and weeds and tree shoots that are coming up underneath that. We've got one more tarped zone up here that remains also. This will be the location of our high tunnel in the future. And my dream is to have a rolling high tunnel, so I'm hoping to have 2 locations for this tunnel where I can slide it back and forth at different times in the year. But all that's to come in the future. Right now we're focusing on starting a manageable amount of projects at once. With that, let's move on to the third zone that we've got here. Here the space in our yard really starts to open up. We've got a large bank of willows on the far side there. That's 130 feet away from where I'm standing. And we've still got this one lilac hedge as wind protection on this side. The field that we're standing in used to include 400 row feet of sour cherry bushes that were infilled with grass and would have been really difficult to reclaim. So we had them all taken out with a drum mulcher. Now they're sprouting back with vigor, but it's allowed us to reclaim the surface a lot quicker. So our vision for this space is U-pick. We want to start including more of our farm members in the activity of harvesting. And so the crops that we're going to select for this zone are going to be those that are most easy to harvest. So think berries, raspberries, strawberries, think winter squash. They'll come at the end of the season, pick off the squash. Think potatoes, always a family favorite to dig those up with kids. Think carrots, maybe shelling peas, maybe onions, and we'll see how the popularity of different crops compares once we start to experiment. But for now, we're just getting set up. It takes years to establish a really good raspberry production. So we've got transplants started for that. In 3 years, they should start to be maturing and producing at a reasonable rate. So we wanted to get those started right now. And we still got some lingering apple trees here that we have yet to remove, but those will be coming out in the future to join our orchard at the back. This area is the 1/3 of this U-pick zone that we've kind of finished to the point where we'd like it in the future. So you can see we've got 100-foot rows of winter squash and potatoes, another more winter squash here. And so this is going to be our first little test zone for a U-pick. Once these crops start to mature, we'll invite people in and see how the U-pick experience goes for our farm members. That may include some of the items we've got on the other side, like the big carrot patch, the onions and garlic as well, but we'll kind of play it by ear as we've got time this year and see how things go. Planning wise, the biggest difference with this zone is that instead of 20-foot beds, we've got 100-foot beds. And you also see a large walkway between our beds too. This is something you never see in our market garden. I wouldn't waste this much space. But here, when we're thinking about all this traffic that could potentially be here, like we could have families with strollers or wagons or kids that just need to run sometimes. I want to allow for those activities here without damaging the crops and make the U-pick experience a really pleasant one. So we're growing a little less efficiently for the sake of including the people in the process. Thankfully, with the use of landscape fabric, we're still able to control all of this extra space really well just by laying out a run of fabric here. And so the weed pressure here is actually less intense than it is in the market garden where I've got more exposed soil. We'll talk about weed control a little bit more later. And as for the 100-foot length of these beds, I thought that made more sense because if we're including more people in the harvest, we're going to be moving product faster and in larger quantities than we would be in our market garden area. So that's the general vision here. We'll see how it develops. I hope to add one new zone here every season and gradually take this over with a U-pick experience. The fourth and last zone that we've designated is an orchard, something we weren't able to do at all in the city. So this is a really exciting addition here. When we first moved here last year, there were apples, cherries, haskellps, choke cherries scattered throughout the property. There was very little logic except for in this back zone, thankfully, because this is where it makes the most sense to have an orchard. We need to visit this space the fewest times in the year. When we do need to visit it, we can usually harvest huge amounts of product, or we're just pruning, and that's something we can pull a tractor out for and collect our materials and then drive it back. And so we don't need a lot of trips. It makes sense to be far away from the house. It also needs the fewest services. Like, I don't need to have irrigation here all the time. In fact, we don't have any irrigation here yet at all, and it's doing fine. So another reason to have it further away. So we've got 6 rows of apples here. They're all dwarf varieties, but they're unknown to us, unfortunately. So we're gradually gonna be taking notes about their characteristics and get rid of the ones that aren't that desirable and replace them. We've started that replacing process here already. We've got varieties like Goodland, Parkland, Nor Kent, Red Sparkle, I think, a couple of others, all dwarf rootstocks so that we can walk up to the tree and pick most of the apples without standing on a ladder. That's a valuable thing for our UPIC members as well that will be coming here, and the more I can keep things safe for them and easy to harvest, then the better the experience will be. The row spacing here, if it isn't obvious, increases dramatically again from our UPIC zone, where the row spacing was about 6 feet between rows. Now we're up to 12 feet between rows, and that's enough to accommodate these dwarf trees. And our row length here is a little over 100 feet, just because that's how it was, and I'm not taking too much extra effort moving these apple trees to fit them into my row patterns. To my right, we've got some Saskatoon berry bushes. This is a great treat to have here established already as well. They seem to be relatively productive, but they're very infused with quackgrass, and it's an incredible amount of work to have to get that grass out of the shrub area while they're still growing. So we're gonna gradually restart this Saskatoon berry zone, make it bigger and better. Over here, where we see another sheet of silage tarp laid out, what's waiting to be established here is just 3 100-foot rows of Saskatoon berry shrubs at each of these red flags. So these are 12 feet apart, like our orchard zone here. And I'm clearing the slate right now so that when we do start planting these Saskatoons, there is no grass pressure at all. In fact, I'm going to enlarge this silage tarp zone to stretch right to the first mulch bed over there with the apples and right to the raspberries, so that there's absolutely no quackgrass popping back into our Saskatoons once we get those planted. The easiest way for me to eradicate that grass is let time do the work with the help of the silage tarp. So there's a look at the 4 growing zones that we've got designated here on our new property. I feel like they're the right size and they're in the right place, so I'm comfortable with how things are developing here. But I honestly do miss a lot of the infrastructure that I had set up in the city, the washing station, the walk-in cooler, the nursery greenhouse. I don't have any of that here yet. It will come in time. The first focus for me had to be starting some of these test plots just to see how the soil would perform and what kind of pests might show up for us when we run through a whole season here. Below my feet, pretty much everywhere on the land is just a combination of grass, weeds, and shrubs trying to make their way back. So every garden area that we've started, we've had to overcome those pressures while establishing fertile conditions to have productive crops like this in the first year. And that's what we're going to cover in the next video.